first bill on the agenda is Senate Bill 2990, the alternative fueling station tax credit. It basically is a proposal to allow for a qualified alternative fueling station in service in calendar years 20, 21, and 22. It offers a 50% tax credit on the installation of that fueling center up to $3 million each year for a cumulative total of $9 million. Department of Revenue will promulgate the rules and regulations concerning the alternative fueling center, and part of obviously the trend is more electric vehicles are starting to become part of the norm here around the state, and trying to put in the infrastructure into place across the state. This is a bill to assist that. As a description of the bill, are there any questions? There is a reverse repealer in the bill, so it'll be studied a little more. Obviously, it looked a little different out of the gate, but considering what we're under right now, it's going to be pared it down a little bit, but wanted to at least keep the conversation going. So there are no questions. I believe so, yes. Yeah, it's basically a fuel station, like a charging station, like gas. Other questions? File sufficient to pass. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. All right, next is the omnibus bond bill, and I believe you all have a little one-pager, two-pager that you have in front of you to kind of go over the high points of the bill, and I'll kind of read through these and go over each of the sections. In section 1 is the IHL Capital Improvement Fund. Each university is listed there. Alcorn State, their campus security projects, $3.65 million. And this is similar to what we've done the last couple of years, where they've had a 4-year plan, and they've broken out the projects different years. There's a cumulative number at the end of the 4 years that most colleges are similar, but some may be front-loaded, some may be back-loaded. They may have more money coming to them in year 2 or 3 versus year 1. But it all equals out at the end of a 4-year plan. Alcorn State, $3.65 million. Their ag division is $2.635 million. Delta State R&R on campus facilities, $3 million. Jackson State has some R&R on campus facilities of $5.26 million. Mississippi State University is phase 3 of the new kinesiology department. It's $10 million. Mississippi State Division of Ag, Forestry, and Veterinary Medicine is $7.935 million. That consists of a phase 2 renovation of Blue Hall and pre-planning for Dorman Hall, repair and renovations. Mississippi University for Women is $13 million. It's for new facilities, culinary arts program. Mississippi Valley State has phase 2 of the student union, $13.45 million, $435 million. University of Mississippi is phase 2 of a data center building and repair and renovations, $13.53 million. UMMC is $5.68 million, replacing of a boiler. USM has $6,500,000, phase 2 of kinesiology building, repair and renovations, and pre-planning for Hickman Hall. Gulf Coast, USM's campus, Gulf Coast campus is $700,000. The IHL Education Research Center is $1.4 million. That was replacing mechanical air handlers and at the University Center and Public Broadcasting Building. Section 2 is the state agency portion of this. This is the ask from state agencies, Capital Improvement Fund. The total is $54.5 million. Department of Corrections has critical R&R in the amount of $6 million. Department of Finance and Administration has a total of $17.5 million ask, and part of it is $1.6 million for the capital and the grounds, repair and renovations. Phase 2 of the new House chamber, the dome over there has obviously been deteriorating, and this is the actual amount to have that dome replaced. Eventually they'll work on the rotunda in the center and the Senate dome as well. R&R, the War Memorial Building at $1,750,000. $750,000. The space optimization program is $3 million. The statewide critical repair and renovations is $7 million. Department of Mental Health has $7 million in here, and there's a list of the projects that's going to the state hospital, plumbing system, building envelope, Ellisville State School, repair and renovations for $750,000. Repair and renovation at the Hudspeth Center, $2.5 million. The cottages repair and renovation at Hudspeth is $1 million. Bring it to South Mississippi Regional Center, $750,000. Department of Public Safety, they've got a phase one for the new DPS headquarters at $10 million. We've already spent a couple of million in planning and pre-planning on that facility. There's $7.5 million for the replacement of District 5 Highway Patrol substation in Starkville, and the construction of Law Enforcement Officer Training Academy for $2.5 million. Wildlife and Fisheries and Parks has general repairs, $3 million. Mississippi Military Department matching funds for R&R to readiness centers is $1 million. That will help pull down federal funds for the military department. Section 3 is our community and junior colleges. Same thing with a 4-year plan. That's a total of $35 million. You see the schools there and the amounts that are going to each school. Section 4 and 5, this starts to get into the DFA section of the request. These are, the Mississippi Site Development Fund is a $3 million request. This is something we passed 2 to 3 years ago. This directly goes to the local economic development agencies for publicly owned land to ready those spots for economic development projects where it's clearing or whatever the local economic development authorities are trying to do to get those spaces ready. Section 6 is the ACE fund. This is a $20 million request. Section 7 and 8 deal with the DIP fund, the Development Infrastructure Program. That's $10 million. Section 9 deals with BRAC. With the military, that's $3 million. Section 10 is the Economic Development Highway Act. That's a $10 million request. That is for roads and highways, but there has to be a $70 million private capital placement in order to trigger that section of the bill for those funds to be dispersed or used in an economic development project. That's kind of and we haven't listed any of the other projects in there. They're still coming in, but that's a description of what is in the request. There's also a reverse repealer. Working on this with the House. We talked to the House briefly in the beginning, but we're still, I've got some meetings with Treasury to come up with what the final number that we're actually going to be paying off in debt service. I think we kind of held the line that we're going to borrow around what we're paying off every year. And Treasury sent me over a kind of a detailed spreadsheet on the debt service that we have, and this year we have about $150 million in bonds that have been interest only. This is the part that we've been kicking a can down the road. So we have to, there's a balloon payment on those bonds. They will be refinancing those. So the number that they gave me on the list was $412 million is what the number was that we received from Treasury on the principal, but obviously that includes $150 million of bonds that will be refinanced. So that number will come off of that. So we're looking at a lower number, but we're going to take a look at a lot of these projects and infrastructure needs around the state, and we'll try to come up with a list and be prudent in what we're bonding. So that's a description of the bond bill we have working right now. Are there any questions? Senator Horn.
CARES Act,
No, this doesn't take into any consideration of the CARES Act money. This is just the general debt service on our bonds that we have going forward. fiscal year 2020, we paid off $263 million according to Treasury principal payment. This year is $412 million. Next year is $254 million. The following year is $250 million. So we've got kind of a spike fiscal year 2021, and that's part of it is those $150 million in bonds that are tied to LIBOR that have been interest only that we've been paying on for a couple of years. No, I have not. That and any of those funds will probably be expensed through the Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You kind of touched on this, but I want to get an understanding of this. So you mentioned the amount that's going to roll off, but then you mentioned $150 million in interest only. What is the estimated amount of total bonds that we're going to be done paying after this year that you have right now? Is it around the 222?
I think it's around 200, and that's what we're still trying to work with Treasury to get a final number. I've talked to LBO, and their number that they're saying is around 253. But you know, the payment I've got, the list from Treasury shows right now it's 412, 405. $412,405,000 is what is showing on the principal obligation for, and that's general obligation and revenue bonds.
And 150 of that's the part that we've been paying.
150 that is
interest
the
only.
part we've been paying interest only on.
That'll roll into being a principal and interest payment.
They will refinance those on their own. We don't have to pass a bill for them to refinance it, so that'll start accruing as debt service.
Okay.
Whereas we've been paying interest only, we'll start paying debt and principal on the principal and interest on the.
And it would be nice to know what the estimated amount of that principal payment might be as we kind of look at what we're adding back to the total bond indebtedness. Because do you have any idea the impact of that $250 million on like the general fund revenue year per year, what the payment would be?
That's what I'm trying to get is an estimate on what, you know, given what rates they think they can conservatively acquire in the bond market, what do they think that's going to add to debt service? I'm trying to get that information from them.
Okay, and then on the community and junior college portions that you have here for capital improvements, are these are just at the discretion of the colleges? So these are not projects that they've come and talked to you or me about?
This is what the Junior College Association, similar to what we've done the last 4 years, that 4-year plan. Their formula, the way they broke it down. They have a formula on how they come up with these numbers, and that's what.
This wouldn't be any kind of, in any relation to the WET funds and what they receive from that. This is not seeking to replace or change that or do anything different to how we manage that. And then the last little question here on sections 4 and 5, you said on the local economic developers for the MDA, $3 million. You said that would be for some site prep for the 4 regional economic developers. Can you give me a little more background in what that's for?
Yeah, I'm gonna call Jamie Miller's here with MDA. He can give us a little bit better answer to that question.
Good morning.
Morning.
The Site Development Grant Program was passed in legislation in 2017, I believe, or at least y'all began giving bond money toward the Site Development Program in 17. It goes only to local economic development, publicly owned economic development organizations in the state that are developing sites for recruitment of companies. So this program does not go to private entities, only goes to publicly owned economic development organizations. We typically have 2 rounds a year where we'll advertise and invite applications from those, and it's been extremely successful and popular, we believe, locally.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Understood you to say that it's your goal to ultimately end up with a package that is no more than the amount of payments that we've got rolling off right now. And certainly that's been the approach since I've been here, and it's a conservative approach, and I think in reasonable times and normal times, it's a reasonable approach. But I wake up every morning thinking about people keeping their jobs. I saw last week that the medical center is laying off 250 people, faculty, physicians. I'm scared to death that state agencies are going to, and city and county governments that are receiving very, very limited help right now. Now, Congress may step in and do something, but as it stands right now, state and local governments aren't getting anything to deal with the revenue shortfall that we're all experiencing. And thousands of, I'm just nervous that hundreds, maybe thousands of people in state and local government, school districts are going to lose their jobs. So isn't it worth considering borrowing money to keep people employed, to keep people working, to keep them off unemployment, to keep them off Medicaid, understanding that at some point we're going to come out of this and we can appropriate that money to pay those salaries. But I didn't know whether UMC was going to do what they did, and I'm sure they felt like they had to. But if they had come to me and said, we can't pay 250 people next year because we've just been hit with this virus, but we know when we're back and operating with regular medical procedures and we're operating as we normally do, our revenue will get back. But right now we can't pay these people, so we're going to lay them off. Isn't it worth thinking about borrowing some money when interest rates being what they are and the situation being what it is, to keep people working and pay salaries, knowing that that's not normal, knowing that it's a recurring expense, it's not a fiscal plant, it's not R&R, but to keep people from being laid off and losing their jobs. Is that something that you think could be considered before we wrap things up on this bill? Thank you.
Senator, I mean, I'm speaking for myself personally. Everybody on this committee is certainly free to have an opinion about whether or not we should do that. I think that what you also have to consider is whatever we bond in indebtedness, that's going to turn into debt service. If our revenues don't go up, that means we're going to cut somewhere else to pay for the increased debt service. We're already going to have $150 million that we're adding to principal and interest that we've only been paying interest, so our debt service is going up. We bond money. If we do a huge bond bill, that's going to increase. I mean, that's what I'm trying to find out from Treasury is let's get an example of what the debt service is going to be. And if the revenues aren't up, then where are we going to cut to pay this extra debt service? Because once we incur the debt, we got to start paying it off. I don't think that's really something that we can just decide not to pay our debt service. So I think unfortunately, it's a bad position we find ourselves in. There are, a lot of businesses are having to make tough decisions. We're going to have to make tough decisions, whether with the budget or how much to bond. I mean, I think our mindset going into this session was a lot different with capital expense money that we may have had, that the revenues, the economy was rocking along. I think, everything's kind of been turned upside down. So me personally, I don't know if I would borrow money to do that right now. I think it's going to cause problems where we may have to lay other people off because of our revenues not coming up, and where we're going to find the money we're going to cut somewhere to pay the debt service. So, short answer to your question is a tough no. I don't think it would probably be the best thing to do.
Well, the federal government and private businesses are borrowing money right now to deal with the crisis, stay open.
Okay.
Shouldn't the state consider doing something like that too?
I think we've got the CARES Act money that we're plugging in. We're going to be obviously getting to the hospital you just mentioned. I think there's a lot of opportunity to help cover some of the expenses they have that hopefully they won't have to lay anybody else off, and hopefully, but we don't know what's going to happen this fall. We don't know what the case may be, and I think just it's a matter of you asked me what my opinion was on whether we should borrow money to keep people employed at this current state. I don't know if that's the best thing to do. That's just my first blush opinion of it. Senator Fillingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know what the largest single item of discretionary spending is in the state budget?
Education.
K through 12, community college, IHL. So if there were cuts that had to be made due to the fact that our debt service went up dramatically, what do you think the most likely area that we'd have to cut would be?
I would say they would probably have to look at everything on the table. I mean, that would probably be one of the ones that we would have to cut.
And does the federal government have the ability to borrow and print money?
Yes.
Do we as a state of Mississippi have the ability to do so?
We have the ability to borrow, and that's it. We
Thank
can't
you.
print. Senator Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there going to be another bond bill for local projects?
There'll be one in this bill added to it.
Local projects are going to
Yes.
be added in this bill. So is it appropriate at this time to offer an amendment for local projects?
If you certainly are free to offer an amendment if you want to. Did you file a request? We got a list of all the requested bond projects that were in there. We're going to have a list of all those.
I did.
Okay, it's in that list.
Okay, thank you.
Senator McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My initial question dealt with something Senator Blunt said a moment ago. And I think we agreed, and Senator Blunt, you may want to correct this for the record, but I think he said the conservative approach is the reasonable approach. That's the first time I've ever heard him say
I'm not going to put
something
words
like
in Senator Blunt's mouth.
I think I said in normal times, and these are not normal times, but thank you.
Touche.
All right, enough of that. I guess my question deals with the total picture of our fiscal health. And sitting here today, presently, what is the total amount of our bonding indebtedness?
Right now, it looks like it was $5 billion.
So it's about 5 today.
We have a capacity up to about 14 billion, so we're running about 30%.
Right. That's increased dramatically in the last 8 years, hasn't it?
I don't know if I'd say dramatically. We had 2 years we didn't have a bond bill at all, and I think for the most part we've tried to stick around that concept of paying or bonding around what we paid off or less. Now there's special projects that have come up, i.e. Continental and some of these other ones that are outside the norm of the year in, year out bonding.
Right, and I think that's what I'm getting to, and it's certainly nothing you've done. You just started your position here, but I've heard every year since I've been here that we're paying the same amount off as we're basically expending. In other words, that we're breaking even. But by the time you factor in the special projects, we really aren't breaking even. We are increasing our indebtedness each year and have been every year I've been here. So I just want to clarify that first of all. And I guess my second question is closely correlated to that. As we increase our total amount of debt, we can likewise increase our the amount it takes to service that debt, don't we?
Correct. And I think we have taken steps to refinance when the opportunity has presented itself to get a lower interest rate, to be prudent in our managing our debt service.
And as Senator Fillingham alluded to earlier, as that debt service amount increases, that's less money we have to spend on other items, which becomes particularly compelling as our revenues drop in times of crisis, which was the point you were making earlier. And we anticipate, I suppose, the future is going to be more bleak than not from a revenue standpoint, correct?
That's my understanding.
And this bill begins at $222 million, and it hasn't even been Christmas trees yet, right?
That's the asks. I mean, obviously, I've given the caveat that these numbers, people that have submitted them, that these numbers can change. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're doing a great job. Seriously, thank you.
any other questions? Senator Bryan.
All the things that are deteriorating in the House, we're going to fix the dog.
Would you like to amend the bill to insert whatever,
Odd priority. Mr. Chairman, and you know, this, I guess this is the first time that any of us have seen this. It's sort of left full grown out of the head of Zeus. But in conversations earlier in the year, a number of us from our neck of the woods have been particularly interested in doing something for the Chickasaw Nation museum that they're building at Interpretive Center. And I'm wondering, since that's not on this list, is this the last opportunity to have that considered? I'm just not sure I understand where all we're headed.
no, sir, it is not. Obviously, you can, I think you, if I'm not mistaken, you did file the bond request. Is it not? Okay. I knew you had talked to me about that. We had met with the people from the Chickasaw, and so no, this is not the last opportunity, Senator Bryan.
Well, my question is this. One, I want to cooperate with the chair. In one option, assuming that there's this desire to keep the spending level the same, would be to authorize $1 billion for that project and reduce some other item by $1 billion just for the purpose of getting it in the bill at this time. And if the chair thinks that would be a productive thing, I would do that. If the chair thinks it would be more productive to wait and see how the bill develops, I'll do that too. I just want to do whatever's the most productive thing to help this project, which frankly is one of the most meaningful things I've seen proposed since I've been down here for that nature. And I'd like to keep it on the forefront of decision making that's going on, but I want to cooperate with the chair. So what would the chair like for me to do?
Senator Bryan, you're certainly free to offer that amendment if you'd like. It's up to you.
I'll cooperate with the chair, but if I were going to offer such an amendment, I think what I would do would be, just because it's the last item, to reduce the economic development highway from $10 million to $9 million, and add $1 million to the Chickasaw Interpretive Center. If the chair thinks, well, and I'm willing to speak on behalf of the center briefly, if the chair thinks, well, that.
Well, I think your explanation was pretty spot on. Are there any questions for Senator Bryan concerning his amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? One more time. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no? The ayes have it. All right. Vision. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right. All those opposed, raise your hand. All right. The ayes have it. All right. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion? Motion is move title sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion rise to the court. Thank y'all.
It's a good program and all that. That's a really good program.